Have you ever watched an anime and thought to yourself, wow, this scene is insane? But what if I told you a lot of it isn't actually animated? Anime studios have a secret trick that lets them create cinematic shots without actually animating much at all. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. The secret? It's all about utilizing static images, camera movement, and overlays in effective ways in order to save on animation efforts. Instead of animating every frame, animators use clever tricks like panning, parallax, scrolling, and looping effects. This isn't a bad thing, it's efficient. Anime budgets and schedules are tight, so using these shortcuts allows studios to spend more time on the shots that matter. You'll see this a lot in dialogue-heavy anime, where the characters are barely moving, and instead, the camera shifts slightly, or the background has minor motion, or the characters have these looping frames where they're just going from one frame to the next. Other times you'll see things in cinematic shots where a character is frozen in place, but effects like wind, rain, or lighting changes, or hair flowing, or skirts flowing give the illusion of movement. Now, does this mean that all anime are just slideshows? Absolutely not. You can't rely on static images all the time. Good anime balances this technique with fluid animation where it counts, like fight scenes. But when this trick is overused, fans will definitely notice. There are definitely a lot of examples of anime in this day and age that get roasted online because they quote-unquote have barely any real animation, or they just look like PNGs floating around on the screen. That's not to say that this is the fault of the animation or the budget. This could be because of time constraints. For instance, if in a studio you're trying to meet a certain deadline, sometimes there may be moments where the animation director may not have checked certain shots, or perhaps the animator tried to get away with a certain shortcut and it just didn't look good in post. But it is definitely noticeable if an anime quality goes from fully animated Sakuga-like shots all the way down to these still images that barely move. However, this channel isn't specifically about critiquing the anime production pipeline. It's about utilizing these tips and tricks from anime in order for beginners and independent animators to work on their own animations more effectively. Even if you're not working in an anime studio, you can use this trick in your own animations and edits. Let's use this example from my personal anime series, Welcome to the Mind Palace. For shots like this, one of the ways that you can show the illusion of movement is having a looping animation. So for example, this character that's holding a phone is pretty much going to be a static image and it's not going to look that good, but you can actually cheat this by looping 2 or 3 frames to make it look like it has this sort of boiling effect. I believe this term is called bure or blur, where you have a certain number of frames that just loops to make something look like it's shaking. Another example here is my character Dreamer. On its own, if the character just looks like they're standing still, it's not going to look that dynamic. But you can actually make this look more cinematic by looping the hair animation, so you don't have to actually draw all the frames. You can draw the character as a static image, and then just draw the hair on a separate layer and just loop that by itself. That way you can save on animation costs. Additionally, if you're using something like After Effects or DaVinci Resolve, you can add camera shake, parallax scrolling, and lighting effects to make static shots look animated. Let's look at another example from an industry anime. You can see that for these shots, the characters are not moving and the scene is being carried by the dialogue. In order to make the scene feel more cinematic, what they've done in the editing is cut between the different camera shots in order to show the conversation more naturally. This emulates the feeling that you see when you're watching a TV show with multiple camera angles, where they're zooming in on one character when they're talking, and then showing the other character when they're talking, perhaps showing different sides of the characters when they're reacting to different parts of the dialogue. It's very, very clever use of not using too many frames, but still extending the scene out in order to use the dialogue to its fullest extent. Other techniques in this section could be like zooming in on different parts of the background, doing extreme close-ups or extreme wide angles of the scenes, or just showing something else like a flashback or some sort of element. Also keep in mind the characters themselves throughout this entire scene are barely moving or are very limited in animation, if at all. Sometimes it can just be a static shot and it still looks great. Of course, a lot of it is also being carried not only by the dialogue, but also the detailed backgrounds and the insane amount of compositing that goes into making these scenes feel more cinematic. You'll also often see this in background shots, where a lot of times large sweeping shots of the background or looping animations of like a wall or a sky going past gives the illusion of movement even if you're really only drawing one background asset. You can see this in shots like Freeren, where the character is effectively still in the camera, and they're using tricks like moving shadows over the character, moving the skybox, or giving this camera shake to give the illusion that the character is moving in scene, but in reality, in the actual animator, they're probably not moving that much at all. So why exactly am I teaching you this technique? You might be asking yourself, this seems pretty simple in hindsight. Well, in my years of working on TikToks and YouTube videos, I've come to find that a lot of these quote-unquote basic animation techniques are actually not basic at all. I see a lot of comments asking, how did I do this shot? How did I do this shot? Or how did they do this? And I could give a very basic answer, or I can understand that there are not that many tutorials that they would have found that teaches them about this. Like, I personally found a lot of these parallax sort of animations, not from anime, but actually from watching other types of animation like storytime animation. And because a lot of these people are beginners, they're not going to know a lot of the industry techniques. And so by teaching these animators the most basic of concepts, it allows independent animators to start their animation journey, because that's what I'm doing. I am learning the anime production pipeline in order to better create my own independent anime called Welcome to the Mind Palace. And you can actually see that in a lot of the animation shots that I created. I utilize a lot of background panning, I utilize a lot of camera motions and camera shake and parallax, while also limiting the amount of frames that I draw in order to better get these projects out on time. In the end, it's all about working smarter, not harder, just like the anime studios do. So the next time you watch an anime, pay attention to certain shots in the episode. Are you watching animation, or are you watching a PNG sliding around on screen? Let me know in the comments what anime you've seen using this trick. And if you actually watch to the end, make sure that you're picking an anime that is not Blue Lock. And if you guys want to know more about what these red and blue lines mean in animation, check out this video on screen right now. Thank you guys so much for visiting the Mind Palace, and as always, I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.